Instructions for accessing subtitles in a language other than English are included on our board meetings webpage as well as in the description below. Instrucciones para acceder a los subtítulos en un idioma que no sea el inglés se incluyen en nuestra página web de reuniones de la Junta, así como en la descripción a continuación.
All right, it is 6:49 and it is Wednesday, September 21st. This is the Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees regular meeting, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is a closed session. We don't have any public comment regarding this closed session. And it's a closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 subdivision D 2 or 3. It's a special education program dispute with one case, student ID 8569214730. And I will now recess us into closed session. All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome. Today is Wednesday, September 21st. This is the Ross Valley School Board of Trustees regular meeting. It is 7:06, and we are reconvening in open session. We're just reconvening in open session. So again, welcome everybody. Calling this meeting to order in terms of just reconvening into open session. We are here in the Wade Thomas multipurpose room. All attendees are in attendance except for Wesley, who is still not feeling well, so he was unable to join us today. Again, it's 7:07. We're here in Wade Thomas, and before I continue, I want to go ahead and make our land acknowledgement that here in this room, in this area and land that we are on, we're located on the unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok people of present-day Marin and southern Sonoma counties. We honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors, past, present, and emerging. We start off every meeting, for those of you who are coming here for the first time, with some procedural items. And before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to just take a minute and take a moment of reflection on democracy. It won't be a long one today. Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're shorter. Today's just a shorter reflection, not necessarily from me, but for us all. And my reflection today is just about that a lot of what we do procedurally up here is grounded in our values. And if you think about a lot of the, where a lot of our democracy comes from, we talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We talk about holding truth self-evident, and we talk about liberty and justice for all. And so I just want to have us take 1 second to sit up in your chairs, ground yourself, think about your values. What brings you here tonight? Think of some values for yourself that you would like to have show up for you tonight as you engage in our process here. So just think about a personal value that you're bringing that you want to have reflected in how you show up here tonight. And then hold that, and I invite you to say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. Thinking about the values that you bring here tonight and our values that we share together. All right, ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our second procedural item before we move on is to adopt the agenda and the time allocations in the agenda. So I'll look over at my colleagues and see if anyone has any questions about the agenda. We don't have a whole lot of items on the agenda and the time allocations. Nope. I will entertain a motion then.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Marie?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Shelley? Aye. All right, we can move forward. We have an adopted agenda. Our next item is communications. So to the report out in terms of communications, reporting out from closed session. We did take action in closed session. We voted to approve the recommended staff recommendation on the special education program dispute for student ID 856-921-4730. So we had three votes in favor and a abstention. At this point in our meeting, we actually do our first public comment. So at every meeting, we take public comment. So if there's anyone here in the audience who wants to make a public comment on an item that is not on our agenda tonight. So the public is always welcome to come to any of our meetings. If you have something that you would like to tell us, you don't have to wait for it to show up on an agenda. You're welcome to come to our meeting at the beginning of every meeting. We allow public comment for items that are not on the agenda. So if there's anyone here who has something they want to say that's not on the agenda, please. Oop. All right. We will go ahead and move on with board announcements. This is the moment where if the board members have anything to announce, this isn't our committee updates. They're just if there's anything you've been involved in that you want to make an announcement. I'm looking at,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Did you have something, Marie?
Not.
Okay, so I, on Friday, went to the Hidden Valley Boots and Barbecue event that they held. It's kind of the beginning of the year get-together for everybody. So it was a nice community event that they had, and it had been a couple years since they'd done it, so it was really nice to see everyone. And then yesterday, I want to say thank you to Eric and Heidi for having me over at the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. I got a lovely tour, and I got to see the program in action. So.
Marie?
And I just want to acknowledge the fact that the meetings are now on Wednesday, and I do appreciate the collective efforts for all the team here to move them from Tuesday to Wednesday so that I can attend them moving forward. So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Ryan, any announcements? No. You're welcome, Marie. We're glad to keep you here, so I'm glad we could make that work for you. We are on to correspondence and communication with the board. So correspondence and communication with the board is different from public comments. We do post any communications that we get from the public that are addressed to all of the board, and so we post them. Marcy, you've got the notification on this in terms of letting people know when we get, anytime we get an email or some correspondence to the board, it gets posted up until 3 o'clock the day of the meeting. So we've got a couple.
And if any come in after 3 o'clock on the day of the meeting, then they get posted on the next regular board meeting.
Okay. So we do have a couple of those, and they are publicly posted on our board docs. Has everybody been able to go ahead and take a look at that? Great. All right. Then we can move on to the section of our agenda, which is presentation and action item. And we've got one we've got one item for tonight, which is the update from the Deer Park Working Group and about Deer Park. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to the presentation. Oh, let me stop for a second. Again, just for those of you who may not have been coming to our meetings before, the way that this works, just so you understand, is we're going to go ahead and do a presentation. There may be some questions for clarification or some questions for understanding from the board about the presentation. So we'll take some back and forth with respect to some questions from the board to clarify or understand what's being presented. We will then, when we're done with that, we'll go ahead and go out to the public for public comment. Depending on how many public comment requests we have, I'll look at how many we have and we'll figure out how to do the timing on that. We usually do 3 minutes if we get a whole lot of public comments. Sometimes we make that shorter, 1 minute, 2 minutes. So I'll take a look and see what we've got there. Then we will bring it back to the board for further discussion and action items. So just so everybody knows how that's going to flow. Let's go ahead with the presentation.
All right, thank you. Very good. Okay, so as we've been doing for the past couple of meetings, we have left all the slides in from the first time that we started to do a slide presentation on August 2nd. So the first 26 slides are not new, and I'll go through those fairly quickly. And if anyone is interested in getting more detail on any of them, then any of our past meeting recordings have the full details of the elements of the slides that were presented. So these cover from August 2nd through August 23rd, September 13th, and then, of course, tonight's presentation. So, and all prior board meetings are linked on board docs, and on the one of the last slides before the question slide lists links to all the previous board meetings since we began talking about the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center and the Deer Park back in June, on June 14th. So this is the beginning of the slide of the information that we did at the August 2nd meeting. And since putting a working group together in June, we've been meeting on a regular basis, often more often weekly, to determine solutions. And this is a slide to show that it's a complicated situation. And since the beginning, we have agreed upon and acknowledged the existing situation needs to change, and we began working toward a solution that benefits all. 3 solution pathways have been identified, and conversation about those solution pathways have included the note that a reasonable deadline is needed. Since we know that the status quo couldn't continue, we put our energy toward the preferred alternative, which is to sell directly to the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. But we also needed to continue researching, information gathering, and considering other options toward a resolution within a reasonable deadline. We've maintained a list of the many meetings that we've had and will continue to have to make this work. And then that took us to our August 23rd meeting. And this was, at this meeting on August 23rd, is the areas of agreement that we arrived at through Deer Park Working Group meetings since our August 2nd meeting. And that's related to learning of and coming to agreement on an exception to be able to do a direct sale or transfer to the Children's Center. And then that brings us to our September 13th meeting. And there we continue to show that our meetings to date and those that were calendared for the future. Let's see. And let's see, this one is, at this point at our last meeting, our board had requested on August 2nd some information that they would have required to need to have and to know in order to be able to make the best decisions that they could regarding this matter. And so what we started to do at our 9/13 meeting was to show which of these items had been completed and which ones were still in progress. And since our September 13th meeting, the very last item, the timeline, milestones, and deadline, they have now been established. So those are complete. And then we, at our last meeting too, provided an update on the fire safety information. So we had started our due diligence to learn as much as we could about the information we had originally received back in June. And so we listed all of the documents that we had had to date that had gathered and researched. And our Deer Park Working Group, at our meeting on September 8th, we had fire personnel, and they confirmed the accuracy of the DUDEC report. And to reiterate, just as we talked about at the last meeting, there is a difference between the annual fire inspection, which is operational, and the building's legal non-conforming status, and which is based on the physical structural status. So there are differences between the two, and just because the annual fire inspection is passed doesn't mean that the buildings conform to current code. And local fire inspection does not make note about the buildings, just about the operations that take place inside of them. And let's see, so we definitely, between whether the property owner is the school district or the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center, there are different triggering actions that would legally require or compel certain types of upgrades. And so the current safety issues are based on the condition of the buildings that's noted in the DUDEC report is about the facility, but not anything to do with who owns the building and what needs to be done or what would trigger any of the requirement upgrades. And then we had some key findings from our fire due diligence. And so I explained that on the last slide, is that there are some differences between what regulations apply depending on who owns the property. And at our last meeting, Chris, our business manager, presented the DUDEC report, given that Jeremy Kahn, who works for DUDEC, wasn't able to attend. And at that meeting, there were some questions that arose from the board that we'll address a little later in tonight's presentation. And so then we had a timeline and process update. And so this is where we presented the 3 pathways that we've been working on. And then also the specific pathway, which is the preferred pathway, is to, and Heidi from the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center reviewed that timeline related to the preferred pathway. And at the last meeting, we were unable to get to the Ed Code 17458 checklist. Our attorney was called away to another meeting, so he was unable to attend. So he is here with us this evening and will be able to provide an update a little later when we get into tonight, the aspect of tonight's presentation. And at the last meeting, reviewed the items that we had found in archives. We had been talking at our Deer Park working group meetings about also as part of our due diligence, looking back to learn some history that might be helpful as we're going forward in the process. And one of those slides, or one of the elements that we found and reviewed, was related to the 7-Eleven process that occurred back in the mid-1980s. And the agreement between the sale purchase that was had been reached by the Children's Center of the Deer Park site and the school district back in late 1988 for a sale price of $550,000. And then there was the withdrawal from the purchase deal by the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center board 2 months later. And then everything from here down takes us now to our board meeting this evening. And so just wanting to check to see, are there any questions or anything you would like us to review from our past meetings and past presentation items?
No, I would just like to acknowledge that was a very fast recap of many meetings, but we can't go over all of it in great detail, but I really would encourage everyone, if there is a particular piece of information that you want to learn more about, to go back to the past meeting where that was discussed, and you can listen to our board presentations and learn more about any of those particular items. So,
all right, and Chris?
So at the last board meeting, there were a couple questions related to the DUDEC report, and one of the questions had to do with the colors on the map, and yes, they do align to the approximate years of the fires that were in our area. And the other question had to do with where the data was coming from, and it has to do with DUDEC actually reaches out to CAL FIRE, and the information is derived from CAL FIRE.
all right. And then, as we've done with our other board meetings, just to let you know, since the Deer Park Working Group is, I'm the only board member on that working group, so this is just to update the rest of the board on the meetings that have been happening since our last board meeting. So we, since our last board meeting, the staff met with a potential 7-Eleven process manager, which was one of the tasks with regard to 7-Eleven in terms of being able to make that a really efficient process. So we finally were able to find somebody who we could work with on that process and can help manage that process effectively. We also had a Deer Park working group meeting on Monday. It was just on Monday. A Deer Park working group meeting on Monday where, as we always do, we review all the materials because we're working together. So we review the materials that are going to be presented at our board meetings when we're in this Deer Park working group meeting. which is Heidi and Eric at the Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center, board member, and our legal counsel, and Chris and Marcy and I are there. So we had our regular Deer Park Working Group meeting, and then we also just met with the County of Marin, their real estate staff, their Parks and Rec staff, a couple other staff this afternoon. We had a meeting with them, and that was on our checklist with respect to doing our due diligence and reaching out to all of the main agencies in the county who might have an interest in this process, or who might have an interest in the sale transaction that we're doing, because we really want to do as much as we can up front in the process to understand so that we don't have any surprises downstream in the process. So I think it was a really good meeting. We received some helpful information from them. We did, let's see, I'm just gonna grab a couple of notes. We mainly at that meeting talked to them about the appraisal process, because it is a unique property, so we understand that it's a unique appraisal. They had some good information that they shared with us about the appraisals that they've done in the past. We talked to them about the reversionary clauses that we are been talking about having in the process as well, and talked to them about that, and they seemed to say that that did make sense, and talked about that, the technical stuff. So it was a lot of it was very kind of operational technical. We also did talk to them about, which we had mentioned before on this pathway, of maybe being like a backup offer, or in between, like an escrow type of deal, whether the county would ever be interested in possibly being a purchaser that could then transition the property. And we talked about the logistics of that, and what that might look like. The county, they didn't express an interest at this point. Didn't feel like it was a fit with the county, but they gave us a referral for maybe talking with the College of Marin, which is another entity that we had not yet had on our list to talk to. So we'll go ahead and follow up with the College of Marin as well. But I think it was a really good meeting, helpful information. After this board meeting, the staff is going to meet on site on Thursday with the appraiser. One other interesting thing from that meeting was they also reiterated that right now it's really difficult to find appraisers, so they were glad to hear that we actually have secured one, because they said that can take a long time to do. And so we're gonna move forward as quickly as we can with our appraiser, and I'm really glad that they're gonna be able to come out this week to go ahead and start that process. We have additional meetings scheduled, and we will continue to move forward.
All right, and actually we were able to move our next year park working group from October 6th to the 3rd. We were able to confirm that works today. So we're going to be meeting on Monday the 3rd. All righty, and so we have, that brings us to our next slide, which is kind of a carryover from our last meeting, since Terry wasn't able to present on this. And I know that you all have had a chance because it was up on the last board agenda as well. But if you have any questions, or if there's anything, let me turn on the microphone now. And if there's anything that, Terry, you might want to present specifically related, this is our Ed Code checklist that we've been able to work through to understand how we can do this exception of a direct sale, and what are all the steps that we would need to do in order to make the preferred pathway happen and come to fruition. So is there anything, Terry, that you would want to talk specifically about this? Or
just a quick clarification, every time we have a meeting, we have both our attorney and the Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center attorney on the phone. They're both down in Southern California, and so we have them on the phone so that they can hear us, they can hear your comments, and then we can ask them questions. So just in case you can't see what we're doing up here with the phone and why she's talking to the air, and somebody named Terry who's on a phone, so.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. The checklist is very much self-explanatory because it goes through each of the various items. There are a couple of things that I think are helpful to highlight. The history of why there is a 7-Eleven committee. It's called the 7-Eleven committee because it is people that are representative of the public within the school district, the people who are interested in, dependent on, or related to the school district. The purpose of the 7-Eleven committee is really to get a cross-section of people who would review the circumstances and determine whether the property actually would be considered surplus or if it's something that would be a valuable district asset. So that determination is looked at by this group as a recommendation. Part of the reason for it is to avoid the appearance of impropriety when a piece of property is disposed of. So you'll see on this checklist a group of people of the ethnic age group and socioeconomic status within the district, business community, landowner, parent. Oh,
sorry, you cut out.
People from the business community, landowners, landowners or renters, teachers, administrators, parents of students, and people with special expertise. That committee is typically impaneled by the school board, and then they are given data so that they can do this evaluation. This Ed Code Section 17458 is a shortened version of a surplus process where you don't have to go through all the different people that you're supposed to offer property to. The 7-Eleven committee has a number of jobs to do. That's it in the second group of bullet points. I'm not going to go through it, but basically it's the jobs that they would do in order to establish and come up with a report and evaluate data that's provided to them. On the next page, there is a section called the Naylor Act. What the Naylor Act is for public parks or recreational use properties. So that is a priority of the state of California. So if the property could be viewed as a park or recreational area, then the city, counties, parks or recreational district, regional park authorities all get an ability to make a below market offer for this property to keep it within the public use for the purposes of use for recreational purposes. There is a formula for how that value is determined. It is no less than 25% of the fair market value. So that's probably the easiest number to use. It's generally based on the costs that were put into the property by the state of California and by the district. The next section, with regard to outdoor space, that's just one of the criteria to determine if the space eligible for use under Ed Code Section 17458. It's very technical. It's pretty self-explanatory. Confirm the eligibility of transferee. That's also criteria for whether or not the transferee falls under Ed Code Section 17458. Also very self-explanatory. Item 5 is the newest piece. That's AB 1486. It is now required that when you dispose of property, that it has to be evaluated to determine if low-income housing can go on that property. So the Housing and Community Development does get a bite at trying to figure out if they could try to get low-income housing on the property. This happens to be an exception. So all we need to do is send a notice, and I've done a number of these notices, and generally HCD will pass on intervening in the process. The last piece is a notification to the planning agency that the use will be consistent with the use of the town of Fairfax, which I don't think will be much of an issue. So that is your 17458 in a very quick nutshell. The checklist is very self-explanatory. And when we actually enter into the 7-Eleven process, that is a public process subject to Brown Act and subject to public notices. So it will be explained in much more detail directly to the 7-Eleven committee when we convene that committee. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, Terry, it's Ryan.
I was wondering if you could just repeat the part where I thought I heard you and I wrote down that you said that we can accept no less than 25% of fair market value. Is that the lowest we can accept the offer for, or can you just clarify that? Because I think I missed it.
That is the highest value. That is the lowest value that you could accept a Naylor Act offer. That is to use the property for example, as hiking trails or as a recreational area. The price that the city or county or recreational district would pay is 25% of fair market value. However, they must use it for that recreational purpose. If they don't use it for recreational purposes, then it reverts back to the school district.
And secondly, does that include the reversionary clause?
Yes, that's actually built into the Naylor Act. 17489 has a statutory reversionary clause built in if the property is not used for recreational purposes.
Thank you.
And the only other piece I was going to clarify, we are going through the Naylor, we will be going through the Naylor Act once we finish the 711 process. And one of the part of the updates that I was giving is we've already done some preliminary conversations with all of the entities who might exercise their right to purchase a property through the Naylor Act. And so far, we haven't heard of any interest out there. So, but we're still going to.
And actually, I had a question about that. When we talk about 60 days, it's 60 days total, right? It's not like you ask one and you wait 60 days, because I can see in the timeline that it's indeed end-to-end 60 days maximum. So if we have started talking to those entities and we go the 60 days, it's a maximum in this case.
Correct, and we can.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And we can notify all of the entities that are applicable under Naylor at the same time.
At the same time, got it.
And then a question, Terry, that came up today when we were meeting with the county is, let's say that all of the entities reply prior to the end of the 60 days. We don't have to wait until that 60-day passes if they've all replied prior to that. Is that correct?
Yes, if you get a response saying we're not interested, then you can move on. But you would need to have each of the entities tell you that they're not interested before you move on.
Okay, great.
Eric, was that your, okay, there's your question, great.
Well, that was my question as well, so that's good.
Good, all right. Any other clarifications or questions for understanding a little bit more? No, okay. As you can see, it's process is fairly prescriptive in what we have to do, and relatively, it's a open public process, so that's why we are looking at contracting with someone to help manage that process, because we would like our staff to be managing our district, not managing that process. So,
all right, thank you. Are there any other questions for Terry at this point regarding the checklist?
Actually,
Rachel?
what Shelley said just sparked something. So we're contracting with a process manager, I believe is what you called it. And so this is someone who would run the 711 committee process for us.
and we'll be bringing more information back to the next meeting. So when we go forward approving and launching that process formally, it'll also be approving a contract to do that.
Okay. Do you guys have any ballpark on the cost for that sort of?
Yes, and I can do that now. But yes, we, in talking with the person who would run it for us, doing a back of the napkin math, it could be a lot higher, it could be a lot lower. It depends on how long the process will actually take. If it does go in accordance with the draft timeline that we have been able to work up, then it could run about $44,000. For doing all, I think I went off. Okay, I'll try to talk, oh, there I am, back again. And so that is, but it could be less. And so this is just a rough estimate that he's been able to calculate just so that we have a ballpark. So it's rough. And if it goes in accordance with the timeline, it could definitely come in less. So he was kind of going on the higher extreme, but if it goes much longer, then it would be, of course, an additional cost. And so as we're traveling through, as Shelley said at the next meeting, is when we would bring back the recommendation for commissioning the 7-Eleven committee. And then we would have, we could get started in the process. And if at any point through the process, if we exceed what I'm going to ask for tonight, which is the ability to plan to spend up to the $44,000, then if we were to go over that, we would come back and talk with you all about that before expending any more than what you would give us direction to do.
As we are talking about money, is that expense come out of general fund? That's a question for you, Chris.
It probably would be a general fund expense,
Okay, thank you.
although we could certainly look at other sources, but I would have to talk with legal counsel on that.
All right, and so can I just ask, since we're on this now, could you provide direction to, or would you like to get through the rest of the presentation and then discuss that later in the meeting?
I mean, I think I'll say in order for us to approve and launch a 7-Eleven process, I think we're going to need some assistance in managing of that process. So I would definitely bring that back at our next meeting when we're launching that process.
Okay.
And it will be a not to exceed number, and we will need to manage it closely.
We're supposed to make a motion before we hear the entire presentation.
Oh, no
It's-
motion?
no.
That
Okay.
was just to give you the information, since it was asked at this meeting.
Yeah.
And then just to make sure that you all had it, had that
Yeah.
later in the presentation.
Got it.
To provide direction. There's not an action item on launching or commissioning or approving a 7-Eleven this evening. That would be at our next meeting.
Super.
So we'll come back with the formal request at that meeting. But if we
Right now
could
you
have some direction.
You go ahead and then we'll approve it next time. Okay.
Great.
It's a preview.
Yeah, it's a preview.
It's a preview, so we
Got
know
that.
what's coming.
You see, I'm ready to jump in action here. Okay.
Okay. Anything else then on the 7-Eleven process, Naylor Act, information process, anything about before we move on?
So sorry, I just want to clarify something. So the 7-Eleven process, we'd have to get a process manager to handle that. I know we've got multiple pathways going on right now. The one where we transfer directly to another public entity, like say a city or like the town of Fairfax or someone like that, we wouldn't have to go through a 7-Eleven committee process for something like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no one is interested in doing that?
So far, but we haven't formally asked. The closest we have had to that is in our meeting today with the County of Marin. So we would continue on in our Deer Park Working Group meetings as we're going back and asking the other entities that have been identified, the town of Fairfax. So through the county, who was present today at that meeting was the county itself and the Parks and Rec department, or the county, regional parks department. And so at least from the regional parks department, there wasn't any interest in possibly taking the property as part of the Naylor, as being a Naylor Act entity. But in terms of the county, interested in potentially as a public entity purchasing it, and then along that pathway of making sure that the Children's Center maintained occupancy at the site, is that didn't seem to fit within their realm of what they would be interested in. So at least one of the entities that we could approach to do it has given us informal but initial knowledge that they would not be interested as one of the public entities. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that helps.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay, so the new items that we have for this tonight's board meeting, since our last meeting last week, is we're going to cover a process update on meetings to date and those planned, occupancy resolution in our board materials, and beginning a conversation around starting the valuation or sale discussion. What we're talking about tonight is a framework for having the discussions, but not the actual details regarding valuation or sale, because we can't get into direct negotiations regarding the sale of the Deer Park property to the Children's Center until we've completed the 7-11 process. But prior to starting on that, we can at least start to have preliminary conversations and to see if we're in the ballpark. And so the framework would be for how we might be able to begin those considerations and to see and get initial feedback and so on. So I will turn that over. Oh, wait, nope, sorry, wrong slide. All right, and I think that's it on that one, sorry. And so Chris, with the more of the Deer Park history.
And so this particular slide, one of the things that we've been continuing to do is to pull historical information. And so as we're looking at it, we're trying to clump it into certain eras as well as pieces of information. And so as you look at it off to the left, we have the 1950 to 82, which we're looking at just some information related to the site in particular. And each of these has links into it, and they're all, if you go to the document online, on the board docs, you can actually click and it will bring up the specific document. And so as you look at it under the Deer Park School area, we have some documents like the condemnation when we purchased the property. We have the easement, and we have an annexation from the town of Fairfax. As you look at the second grouping, you have your first Deer Park lease, the 7-11 process, and the sale agreement. And so each of those is listed there, which also includes the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center withdrawal of the offer to purchase the property. As we move into the, one other thing I want to point out is something that we've done is we've kind of grouped together some of the board members that were during some of those eras. So you'll see that listed at the bottom. As you move to the second lease column, which is the third column to the left, we have our 1999 lease. And so that's linked in there. And it does, it's important to note that it's a reduced below market rate. And there's some agreements in there to maintain the premises to all, to the facility, and to make sure that it's in a safe and clean condition. And also there is one document in there from 20, I'm just blanking out now. There's one document in there from 2000, I'm sorry, is when it happened. It's the improvement to add some modular buildings, and that is a letter from DSA approving the site plans, and it did go to the Children's Center as well, and that's in there. As you look at the overcrowding, you will see we started to have an overcrowding issue within the district, and you see that within the termination of the lease, which is linked in there. Then there is there's an article in the IJ that the town of Fairfax had sent a letter to the district related to fire and safety issues, and that's linked in. And we also have the board president at the time declining to rescind the termination, that's linked in. And finally, the superintendent ultimately rescinding the termination of the lease. So you'll see that in there. As you look at the lease extension in Ross Valley, Charter Prop 39, you see the agreement to extend the lease, and it's actually the 2015 lease extension. There is some language in there related to potentially relocating the site from Deer Park to Red Hill. And again, it continued a below market lease rate. And then we also did have received several Prop 39 requests from the charter school. Then you move on to the 19 through 22, which you have COVID, you have a 1-year extension, you have ongoing leases and discussions. And so you see the lease extension in 2019, and also as we continue into the lease extension request, which happened here in March as a result of the charter reaching out to us in order to receive additional funding, additional grants to do construction projects. So that's also part of this. So in summary, that kind of gives you some of the history of the documents that we've provided, so that it kind of lays out more what's happened historically.
So Chris, in looking at these, I know there was some questions about the issue of like who's responsible for the building and stuff. So it looks like in 1999 is when, in that second lease, that there was this agreement happening, and then that kind of rate understanding has basically continued, and that
Yes.
the rate that you have on here in the 2015-2019 is the same rate that you have in the 2019 extension? The 75 cents?
I believe that is correct, yes. And so again, it's below market rate rent in exchange for maintaining the facilities. So.
Are there any other questions about that history? I know it's a lot of documents, and staff has been going through boxes of paper. And all right. And the point of the history is, in my mind, the point of knowing what the history is to set a context for us to keep moving forward, to not dwell in the past, but so that we can make our forward-based decisions, at least understanding the context, and that we all have a shared understanding of the historical context so that we can move forward. And in moving forward, part of that is also recognizing the work that we've done, and that we have actually done a lot of, we've had a lot of success in removing barriers towards our preferred alternative, and a lot of work and action has been taken. And I know sometimes it feels like a long process, and people are feeling like there's a lot of words because you see us up here talking, but there's a lot of activity that's happening in between these meetings. We established the working group. We took a step back from the original approach and decided to get together and start having a working group. We've aligned around a preferred alternative that we're all working directly towards. We've agreed on this exemption. A lot of research was done by both lawyers on figuring out how to make that work. They also worked together on the checklist that you saw in terms of the 711 and the Naylor Act process. So there was a lot of work and collaboration on that. And I just also want to acknowledge the district staff for the amount of time that I know that you guys have been putting into it to pull out the history that's not even on here, but to pull out all of that historical information, to coordinate all the meetings. So when you look at all those meeting schedules, you're looking at the people who are coordinating all of those meetings and everybody's schedules. And if any of you have tried to coordinate meetings, that can be a lot of work. We are now providing simultaneous translation, Spanish translation, in all of our meetings, and I'm really appreciative of us taking that step forward. That's a very tangible act that we are funding and coordinating. We've got a timeline that we've put together that we've all worked on, and that the district is taking action to pay for things like an appraisal, for the reports that you've seen. Those are tangible actions that we are taking to make this work. And as you just heard, we're also looking at doing a 711 process. We didn't have any intention to sell this property or to sell this property until we started into this process. And so getting appraisals, getting reports, doing the 711 committee and funding that and coordinating it I just want to, those are removing barriers, moving us forward, and tangible actions that are happening to make this work. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of the work that everybody has done to get us here today, the barriers that we've removed, and the tangible actions that are happening. So.
Okay, and on that note, one of the things that we knew was needed in our process right now is for both the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center and the district to have some stability while we work through the sale transfer process related to both their occupancy and the liability safety issues for the district. So as we've discussed at prior meetings, we've known since the beginning of the issue of the existing situation and the status quo need to change. Initially, it was suggested by our attorney that the status quo needed to change within 60 days because of the fire safety risks and liability associated with it. But staff and board acknowledged that the 60 days was not feasible, but that we needed to establish a timeline for a resolution. Back in June of 2022, we decided to take those concerns, and instead of having them be in the forefront, we decided to set aside those safety and liability risks and begin discussing and engaging in dialogue about solutions and timelines and finding a path forward. That has been our focus for the past 3 or so months. The fire safety and liability risks are still there. They're still with us today, and they do need to be dealt with. We needed to have a deadline that would protect the district from current and future liability. The solution to transfer the property protects our future liability, but the current liability remains. In order to work within the liability concerns that remain with us today, the district needs to not only be working expeditiously and tangibly toward a solution, but we also have to set a deadline for a change that will sustainably remove us from having liability. The Children's Center also wants stability. So the solution of the sale transfer that we're working on provides that long-term stability that they want, but also they want current occupancy stability so that they know that as we work through this process, they're able to remain at the site as we go through. So given that, and like back in June, we now have a path forward with a preferred alternative solution and a very reasonable timeline with added cushion, just in case it does take a little bit longer. And since our liability decisions haven't disappeared, they've just been set aside so we could find a solution, we crafted a resolution that provides stability for both the Children's Center and the district. So they're afforded the occupancy stability, and the district is afforded the liability protection stability. This is part of the give and take that we are going through as we're working together. We were working cooperatively and working together to try to reach this solution. Sometimes we do hit bumps in the road in our working together, but we're continuing to work through them because we both want to see the same thing in the end. And so if you can, I just want to state, because it seems that, like, if we can flip back, Teresa, to slide 6, and then also, so this is a slide that we've had in our presentation deck since August 2nd. And at the top, it does talk about that RVSD needs a solution under one of the following pathways to be in place within a reasonable deadline. And then on slide 7, which has also been something in our presentation deck since August 2nd, is our bifocal approach maintains appropriate momentum toward a resolution within a reasonable timeline. So we knew that it wasn't 60 days, but we knew that at some point it needed to have an end point. And so we're working through. We do believe that with the preferred pathway timeline, we're going to be there. We're going to get there with hopefully time to spare, and our preferred pathway is going to work out, and it's going to go through. That is what we're all working toward. And I just want to stop there to see if there might be any questions or anything related. Okay, thank you.
No, I mean, I just wanted to just reiterate that the stability that both of us are looking for is both the long-term stability, but that we also have needs right now, and that having a deadline and a date certain helps us to continue to focus on working forward, because it balances out both of what we need, and that will resolve our current liability issues while we're looking for the long-term issues to be resolved. So. Any other questions on that? Do we want to? Okay. So one of the new topics that Marcy had mentioned that we will be talking more about in the future, but we wanted, again, this is just a preview, is the idea of the valuation on the property. And once we get through the 7-Eleven process, we are gonna, have negotiations. And there have been conversations around how much can this property be transferred or sold to. Rachel, I think you had asked about like another public entity. Do we have to do, they don't have to do the 7-Eleven process, but there's this law and regulation in the California Constitution called a gift of public funds that we know that we have to handle and deal with and work with because it's in the California Constitution. So we've had some conversations about this, trying to learn more about it and figure out what it means in terms of different kinds of sale transactions. If it's transferred to another public entity, then it's not a gift of public funds because it's going from one public entity to another public entity. And we also looked to the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, which is a California state fiscal management agency for schools and school boards. And they have given several presentations at the California School Board Association on the gift of public funds issue. So they provided us some information on that. You can go on the next slide. So again, we can't be having a conversation today about negotiating a deal, but we know that there are kind of two ends of the spectrum here. There's a sale for $1 that we've heard from. It is our understanding that that is more from a public agency to a public agency because of the gift of public funds. So for example, the Red Hill example with the dog park was transferred for $1 to the town of San Anselmo, and the TAM Union School District came together on that. On the other end of the spectrum is the fair market value, and that is determined through the appraisal. We do recognize that in doing that appraisal, we're looking at the unique zoning on the property, the conditions of the building. They're going to be looking at comparable sales. They're also going to be looking at the reversionary clause. So all of those kinds of things are going to impact that fair market value consideration. And thinking that then our discussion or our considerations or what we end up with will be somewhere in that middle zone, and that there may be considerations that bring the price, the sale price up from $1, and other considerations that are going to bring it under market value, and that we'll look at something within that range. But wanting to get feedback from the board on this framework, not on the dollars within it, because that's not what we're talking about tonight, but just to present you with the way that the staff has been thinking about it, and that we've somewhat been talking about it in the started conversations in the working group.
In general, when I received the document ahead of time, I checked words I don't understand, but I missed that one. Can someone tell me what means reversionary clause? Can you explain to me in English? Thank you.
The reversionary clause are the provisions in a sale under any circumstance. The two that we have been mainly talking about are that the occupancy will always be for the children's center, that if for some reason that wasn't going to be the occupancy, it would revert back to the district. And the second reversionary clause, reversion meaning the property would revert back to the district if any of these circumstances took place. So one is if for any reason it can't be sold to some other entity, it can't be occupied by some other entity, it can't be used for anything else than the children's center. The second one is if in the future the district needs it for a school site, then that's the second reversionary clause, that we would then retain the right to ask for the property back. There's lots of details associated with that, giving them a long time horizon on that. So that's.
I think this slide is really important because it kind of gives us an idea of what we're looking at and what our limitations are as a public entity, as a district. So this is really helpful for me particularly. I'm very visual, so I like to see it. My question, I guess, is maybe for Terry, but I would obviously like to see the sale to FSACC be on the lower end because I would like this to be possible. I'd like them to be able to get this location. I think it would be in all of our best interests. But I also don't want to fall into a trap of getting into the trouble of giving it away for too little. What's the least amount that we are able to get this property over to them without us getting in trouble legally? Because that's, I mean, obviously we want to limit our liability on all fronts. So I'm just curious if we have an idea, just a percent or.
We haven't gotten into the dollars on, what that is. But yeah, I mean, I think we are all committed to making this work out. We all want to see this transfer process happen. We want to have ownership transferred to the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. So I think what we need to do is in those different zones of what are the considerations, what are the considerations? We have to get into that conversation so that we can make findings. So if we want to make a decision, we're going to have to make findings to make that decision. So.
Okay. No, I think the fact that we're putting so much money into this at the forefront, shows that we're kind of committed to we're trying to get this sale and this process through. I mean, we're obviously gonna send them to go, the staff, we're directing them to go and approve, finding information about getting, approving a process manager. So we're paying, and we paid for a fire report that most likely I'm gonna think is gonna lower the value of the property when they get the appraisal. I'm not a professional, it's just my speculation, but I'm saying we're trying to get this through. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, we wouldn't be investing money and time in this if we didn't want to make it happen. And so we would like to make this happen, and we would like to make this work out.
I think the main part about our job as a fiduciary responsibility to the community is to act as such, as a fiduciary responsibility to our district. My main concern has always been, from a trustee standpoint, liability, straight liability. We don't control what lawyers do. We don't control climate and fire or floods or devastation. We don't control those things. What we are charged to do as trustees, in my opinion, is to protect our community asset and to protect ourselves financially. And anyone who has a leadership role in making tough decisions like this has to recognize that liability is a big deal, and we don't have to go too much farther than a lot of instances where things can happen. So from the trustee standpoint, the liability is by far my biggest concern. If we can find a way for ourselves to remove ourselves from severe liability, as an attorney will tell us, I like the direction that we're moving in. That being said, we have to remember that there's also liability in gifting public funds, as we see too. Now, I'm not an expert in that, but I can tell you that as a taxpayer, anyone who might not see it as wanting to give it to someone for $1 or a discounted rate has the right to say that. That there's got to be a balance in here. And one thing that I myself personally, I would never vote to do would be to sell our assets in case we need them. The fact that there's a reversionary clause in the sale of this is a huge deal for me. It's the only way that I would agree personally to move forward, is to have a reversionary clause in there, so that if something happened, we wouldn't sell the rights to the land in case we needed it in 50 years. Who knows what that's like. So I'm very pleased to move forward, provided we can soundly remove our liability risks and retain the reversionary clause.
And I would add to your point here that that's what the word I was looking for is reversionary in that clause, that word that I can't pronounce. But we need to make sure we have a backup plan. I work in a district where we are actually looking to eventually build a school in the next 10 years. And this is a nightmare to work through that. So my day job is to try to think, gosh, I wish we had a couple of more campuses, and we don't have a lot of empty campuses in Marine. So I'm going to pay a lot of attention to what we have in that, just in case at some point in 10 years, in 50 years, whenever is a time where comes the next round of housing elements, we need to make sure that we have a long-term plan to, if needed, access that property again if we were really in a growth of, for our students here in Fairfax and Anselmo. So that's really the clause about the ownership, like the center selling it to someone else, that's not my worry. My worry is really more if at some point we needed the campus back, what could we do? Yeah. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that one.
I think I'm going to go ahead and bring us back to any clarification questions, and we'll bring it back to the board too for additional stuff. But
I have one more add on that reversionary clause. In the context of needing a property back, its timing should be planned. I mean, I don't want to see someone all of a sudden needing, I mean, I don't know reversionary law. I'm just saying, like, it should be thought out well in advance that we give plenty of time for people to do what they have to do, including our planning. And so that should be built into the clause. And I don't know how that works, but it would be very important for me to make sure that was not a rushed
those are one of those details that will, once we get in, as we're moving forward to finalizing the negotiations, that'll be part of that negotiation afterwards. Marcy, was there anything else on this topic before we go out to public comment?
I think just one of the things that's come up at past meetings is some other districts in Marin County have sold their property to a non-public entity for $1, and Chris and I did check in with those school districts that were named, and they've stated that they've never done that, that there was an example of property being given it, but it was by the town, not by the school district itself. So I just wanted to do a clarification of that, just as that's come up by community at our previous meetings.
And before we go out to public comment, I know we've had conversations, I'm looking over at Heidi and Eric, that we've had conversations in our Deer Park Working Group about both the resolution and this framework and talking through this. So I don't know if there was any other questions or that you wanted to ask before public comment. Then we'll bring it back. Okay.
We have one more slide.
One more slide. Oh, what's the...
I will just say that I do appreciate Rachel's comment, and especially given that we do, in my opinion, serve, this is really loud, isn't it? Should I sing a song? Next time. Given that we, in my opinion, do serve a very important value and purpose in our community for all of the kids in our community, and I think that's super important. So I appreciate your sentiment.
Okay.
Yep. Alrighty, so tonight is a presentation, so giving updates related to the Deer Park Working Group, and then also that given a reasonable timeline has been identified, indicating a variety of solutions can be achieved by August 31, 2023. Staff recommends review and approval of a resolution to secure the Children's Center's occupancy at Deer Park through 8/31/23 with the lease to cease thereafter. And part of our thinking is that we do have a pathway in place that's going to work, and so we're moving forward with that. And just in the off chance that we're getting right up to the end and we're not quite finished, of course, just like as you saw on the slide that Chris has shown of the historical context of the Deer Park, that there can always be an extension of that month-to-month lease. But we're thinking that by that time, a lease won't be needed at all because we will be finished with our pathway solution to having them own the property, maintain their occupancy, and so on. And then just like we've done on the past board meetings is just the listing of all the board meeting information to date. So all of the board meetings that we've had. So these are all linked. So the agenda items and then also the meeting recordings are there as well. So this is on our presentation item, the slide deck, and it also sits on the background information. So anybody could look at that if they were interested in going back to May 10th, 2022. So at this point, I don't know if there are any other general questions before, Shelley said, moving on to public comment or anything like that.
Well, I think it's kind of a question, not a discussion. So when we think about the resolution, like the resolution to secure occupancy until August 31st, does it supersede the month-by-month lease de facto, right?
We would be
That's what
securing
it
the
means,
we
right?
would not exercise.
We wouldn't exercise
we would
any
not
rights.
exercise the month-to-month and through August 31st. That's
And
what the
there is
resolution.
more to this resolution than that, but the most important one being this one, right? There is no chance from us to do any eviction for sure. Okay. So,
We would have no reason.
yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. So,
Okay, we're going to go out to public comment, and then we will go ahead and bring it back up to the board. We have 14 public comments here, so we're if we did 3 minutes at 15, that's 45 minutes. So that seems like a reasonable amount of time. So we'll go ahead and go with our regular 3 minute. I would ask everyone to stay within your 3 minute time period so that we can get through everybody's public comment and still have time to bring it back up here to the board. So if we could be just respectful of everybody else who stays within their 3 minutes. So when it's your turn, you stay within your 3 minutes as well by respecting everybody who went before you and who's going to go after you and do that. Rachel, can I look to you to do a timekeeper? All right, I'm going to go ahead and do what we've done every other meeting, which is to shuffle up the names. And I'm going to call 5 people at a time. And when I call your name, come up here and stand by the podium so we can continue to move forward. And then I'll call another 5 people.
So I'm going to have my timer set to 2.5 minutes. And so when you hear it, it'll go at 2.5 minutes, and then it'll go at 3 when your time is up.
Right.
Okay.
And I am going to make a request that I make in all of our meetings, that we hold on loud applause for people who speak. We want to respect everyone's comments, and so we want to listen to them, and we just want to be respectful of everybody's comments. So if you could hold loud applause or comments about other people's comments, that would be greatly appreciated and a respectful public process. Okay. Lana Rodriguez, Maria, I'm having a hard, sorry, I have to put my glasses on. Okay, thank you. We also have interpretation, so if you would like to make your comment in Spanish, then we can have our interpreter do it in English. It's up to you. Whichever way you would like to do it, we can do it that way. So we'll give you time to do that. Lorraine Ortega. Denise Rodriguez. Yesenia Mendieta, thank you, Mendieta. And Alex Robinson. So those are the first 5. Sorry, Alexis Robinson, my apologies. All right, those are 5. Please, we'll start the timer whenever you're ready. Go ahead.
Bueno, mi nombre es María Rodríguez y estoy aquí por 2 importantes motivos. Por parte del Children's Center, pues yo no puedo decir más que muchas gracias porque mis hijos han estado en él y han tenido pues los mejores momentos de su infancia con ellos. Han tenido mucha felicidad, mucho acogimiento, cosa que en el distrito, pues en las escuelas donde han estado, pues en Hidden Valley, pues no se han sentido con los compañeros realmente aceptados.
I'm here for 2 very important reasons. One of them is the great benefits that my family's had from the Children's Center. My children in particular have benefited greatly from that and all of the services that have been provided. They've had great moments in their life, very joyful moments in their life there, and they've had a lot of good association and a lot of friendships that were developed because of the Children's Center.
En especial mi hijo ha tenido siempre le ha costado el no sentirse aceptado por los demás niños. Desafortunadamente, se ha sentido rechazado muchas veces, pero afortunadamente en la escuela, la maestra, la señora Miss Fish y Teresa hicieron la diferencia para él, marcaron la diferencia en la vida de mi hijo y voy a estar siempre agradecidos con ella. Pero desafortunadamente ahora estamos viviendo otra etapa con él en la Middle School en White Hill, el cual me causa mucha tristeza, mucha frustración como mamá y dolor, porque él está sufriendo de bullying, de acoso, de intimidación. Y a mí me duele como mamá verlo, tener ansiedad, no sentirse seguro en la escuela. Hoy tuve una reunión con el principal y me dijo que me garantizaba la seguridad de mi hijo. Para mí como mamá es difícil mandarlo a la escuela y quedarme tranquila. Yo entiendo que todos los adolescentes es la etapa difícil, que hay niños que están haciendo cosas que no deben, pero mi hijo está siendo dañado emocionalmente. Y a nosotros nos está costando como padres de familia unirnos, salir adelante, comunicarnos unos entre otros, intercambiar la información que tenemos sobre las ayudas, los recursos que hay en el distrito. Hay papás que no saben ni siquiera llenar una aplicación ni cómo bajar una app. Y nosotros como padres tenemos que hacer esa labor entre nosotros. Honestamente, yo como mamá, ¿cómo me puedo sentir respaldada con el distrito cuando ustedes están con esta situación con nosotros mismos? Cuando están gastando los recursos de la comunidad, de nuestros hijos, de sus estudiantes, en cosas que no se deben gastar. Esta pelea es innecesaria. Esta frustración es innecesaria para nosotros como padres y para nuestros hijos. Los recursos que hay se tienen que utilizar. Las cosas que están pasando en la escuela van escalando. Mi hijo terminó el ciclo escolar con estrés, preocupado, y lo está comenzando de la misma manera. Es injusto cuando hay recursos, hay necesidades en la escuela, tienen que atenderlas. Ustedes tienen focos rojos y no son de estos meses. Vienen arrastrando muchos focos rojos y tienen que poner atención. Yo no creo que al niño que suspendieron esta semana por haber intimidado a mi hijo se merezca estar en su casa una semana. No es justo, porque esta situación se puede detener y ustedes no están haciendo nada. Se están gastando los recursos de nuestros hijos, de sus estudiantes, en cosas innecesarias. Basta ya.
Thank you.
Basta.
I want to let your interpreter be able to say what he's going to say.
Review would be, sadly, things have really changed for our family. My student now goes to middle school, Whitehall, I believe she said, and sadly is having a horrible experience with bullying, and thankfully in his younger years he had excellent teachers, Mrs. Fish, and another teacher that was really helping him to kind of handle some of his disabilities and some of the difficulties he had as a young person. But going to middle school and that new environment, it's been a horrible experience. And there's been discussions and meetings with the school staff and the principals to, the threats and the bullying is just horrible. And it's very difficult for me to drop my child off at a school where I know these things are happening. And so it's a very difficult thing to see, especially when there are resources and funding that are available. So I would ask you to take a look at how you're using the funds and the resources. You're spending our children's resources, and take a look at how you're really doing that. They need these helps and they need these supports. So please Take a look at how you're using those resources and use them wisely to help these children that are difficult, because it's our money, it's the community's money, it's the resources of the community. So please take a look at, they're your students, they're our children, so please take a look at how you're using those funds so that there's proper use of them. I'm sorry if I missed him. Lo siento mucho.
Thank you. Okay, Lorraine.
Is it okay if I say something that she said that he didn't catch?
Really quickly, please.
Okay, just one thing. She said she doesn't understand why it is that we are spending so much time on this transfer of sale when the real need and the real urgency is around kids who are being bullied, such as her son. And that's where the resources and energy should be spent.
Okay. Go ahead.
Do I start? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lorraine Ortega. Thank you to all the Ross Valley District Board members and the rest of the community for giving us space tonight. I'm from Archie Williams. I've been teaching there. This is my 8th year and my 21st year teaching. I'm here to address the issue of the Children's Center, and I may not be from here originally, nor did I raise my daughter here, but this is the Children's Center is exactly the type of center that my siblings went to and that my daughter was in when I was raising her. And it's where many, many of my students have attended, and they continue to volunteer there, as well as my former students. So that is why I'm here tonight. It's critical, it's crucial that you all do what is best for that community, not what you all think is right for the board. So I admit that I'm new to these meetings, but when I found out about the possibility of the Children's Center closing, I was not surprised. Honestly, Marin is infamous for not taking care of our communities of color. You started the meeting by quoting the Declaration of Independence and the Pledge of Allegiance, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but whose happiness are you talking about? Whose liberty, whose life are you referring to? You also quoted liberty and justice for all, like before I ask, whose justice? Which stakeholders take priority in the 7-Eleven committee? Which stakeholders take priority in the price for transfer of ownership? Which stakeholders take priority in any of the decisions made to transfer the ownership to the center? As we should all be well versed by now, equity means making sure that our community members can access services so that they can be successful and thrive. I understand you have to abide by certain laws, certain liability issues. And I'm grateful that you've been in negotiations with the center, but honestly, that is not enough. It is not enough. Whenever there is a white affluent community that comes because they want something, simply want something in our districts, they throw money at it, they bring lawyers in, and guess what? They get it. They don't have to put up too much of a fight. We're here today because if you really, really, truly care about the lives, you said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You said justice for all. If you really care about these lives of this community, especially those that hold up your own lives, our construction workers, our nannies, those that are working in the service industry in restaurants, grocery stores, maintenance, custodial workers, and on and on.
Thank you.
Yeah, please deny the resolution, and please, please, please give it at an affordable price. Give the center at an affordable price. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I start?
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Denise, and I grew up in Fairfax. I am a Children's Center alumni and also have the honor of being the lead teacher in one of the school-age classrooms. I attended Manor, Whitehill, what is now Archie Williams, and got my bachelor's from UC Santa Cruz as a first-generation student. Most of you probably don't know me. I got to meet Rachel briefly yesterday, but I'm sorry to make this personal. Shelly, I was in the same grade as your son. You probably don't know me, and I knew who you were before all of this because you were one of the parents who was able to show up at school and help out at school. Not all of us had the privilege of having our parents be able to show up for us. My mom worked long hours so she could financially support us, and she didn't have the financial freedom to take time off work. If it wasn't for the center, I probably would have started school 10 steps behind my peers, and who knows if I would have even had access to the quality education here in Marin, because we couldn't afford to live in this county, most likely. On your website, on the district website, it states that one of your goals is that every student in the district will have access to high quality teaching and learning. So by ceasing to lease or transfer the center, that means that most of our families who are also your families present in your school will likely have to move out of this area because they won't be able to afford the high cost of living. So by evicting the center or not transferring, you're actively working against your district goals. Last week, most of you made statements about how your goal is to work together to achieve the ideal scenario, which is transfer the property. But it feels like you are still presenting roadblocks, and this resolution doesn't really feel all that fair. Your words do not line up with your actions, and you wonder why we are hesitant to trust you have our best interest. I understand not wanting to be liable in case of a fire, but the center is meeting the needs of families and kids who are in your school district. As the board, please do your job in good faith and show up for these kids. Show up for these kids, show us through your actions that you are actively working towards maintaining accessibility to your schools by transferring the property. We at the center know how to work hard and we know how to show up for our kids. We can put in the work to make sure that our buildings are safe for our kids, but we need you to show up for us too. So please do that.
Thank you. Okay, Yesenia.
So I feel like this is in a fall. Hello. I'm a former alumni of the Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center, and I want to start off by saying I want you all on the board tonight to go home after this meeting and watch a 15-minute short film called Family Matters. It's on YouTube. It was filmed at the Children's Center in the late 1990s, early 2000s. This short film gives you an insight on our mission and a goal as a child care center that has been thriving for more than 50 plus years. You as a school board have the power to continue these services that the daycare provides on a daily basis for the families that are enrolled in your schools. It seems as though there's a constant hiccup as to why you can't sell us the property or why you can't sell it to another entity. After last week's meeting, I feel as though we were labeled as a fire danger zone by taking pictures of all the trees and buildings that could cause a major fire. Not once did I hear any of you say, we can pay for a tree company to have those removed or have somebody come and upgrade the vents or facilities. All you have done is highlight the negatives and, in my opinion, try to make us look bad. If you really wanted us to be there, you'd be helping. We've been under fire for more than 12 years now by the Ross Valley School District. For the past 12 years, the school board could have given us the money to upgrade the facilities. So I ask you, the board, to fix the mistakes that your past members of the board have made and work with us, not against us. As I stand here tonight, I plead to you to help us out. As Ethel, the founder of the Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center, Siderman said in the short film, my dream is that this program will be sustained for future generations. It will take the families, the staff, and the community. It has to be at the top of everyone's agenda. These are our children. These are your children. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexis?
Hi, I'm Alexis Robinson, Chair of the Board of the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. First, we want to acknowledge all of the collaborative efforts of the district, especially Shelley Hamilton, Marcy Trahan, and Chris Carson. Thank you. We acknowledge it, we appreciate it, and we are committed to continuing to make collaborative progress, no matter what happens here tonight. Our collective purpose is to reach a final outcome that everyone can live with and that serves the community and its family. Sadly, the resolution you have before you, if adopted as presented, will seriously undermine the progress we've made thus far, particularly the positive atmosphere we've all worked together to establish. I encourage you to reject the resolution in its current form. Our primary concern is that the resolution does not, despite the misleading title, secure our occupancy, quite the opposite. It says in advance that the district intends to evict us on a specific date, August 31st of 2023, unless the district takes contrary action before then. Why would the board choose to send that message to the community? now of all times. You don't have to do this. Please don't. For the first time in this process, if you adopt this resolution, you are stating publicly Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center will be evicted on a specific date with a very aggressive timeline. While we offered a timeline that showed how the center could complete the current process by May of 2023 is in the best case scenario, the district's own timeline said it expected the process to run through August of 2023. According to your own timeline, the deadline you're proposing leaves zero margin for error. Although we too want a quick and efficient resolution to this process, it is a process that the district controls the majority of the steps in. Even tonight, the district is creating a delay relative to our suggested timeline. The first step, the order to create the 7-Eleven committee, was scheduled to happen tonight, but the district has chosen not to do that, creating the first delay in achieving our timeline. During our current working group this week, we offered two substantive I'm sure I said that wrong, alternatives to this resolution, which you refuse to accept or discuss. We agree we need a process and a deadline to guide us through this process. However, we don't agree with your decision to attach an eviction clause if that timeline is not met.
Thank you. If you can wrap it up.
Okay, I'll read through very quickly. If you want to reassure the community, I don't want to do a disservice to those translating though, but I will do it as quickly as possible. If you want to reassure the community, that you are working on good faith for the transfer of the Deer Park property to Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center and maintain the collaborative dynamic we've developed, do not pass this resolution.
Thank you.
Finally, as in any negotiation, a hard deadline cannot be established until all of the parameters of that deal are known. If the district would like the center to agree to a deadline, we must understand the proposed agreements for the transfer of the Deer Park facility.
Thank you. Everybody has 3 minutes.
Ms. Hamilton
please.
has made it clear that at least in her review, the Ross Valley School District should not transfer the property for merely nominal value and will only consider a sale. If the rest of the board agrees, then we need to tell you, you need to tell us
Alexis,
how much, at least
everybody
roughly.
gets 3 minutes,
How can you raise capital, seek finance, or garner the support needed for the deal if we have no idea how much money will be needed?
Thank you.
In the intention of this board to set this process up to fail, we sure hope not. Many of your words and actions over the prior weeks
I might
suggest
have to
it's
shorten
not.
the rest.
But
I really want everybody to have the same amount of
to me,
time.
so thank you,
Thank
Carl.
you.
But this resolution creates grave doubts. The community and the
Thank you.
center are asking for stability and reverence to keep the need of the entire community at the forefront of your decision.
Everyone is, I
Please
set out that we have
reject this
3 minutes. I
resolution
asked
as
you to wrap
presented.
this up.
Give us a term for a set term.
We don't do
Initiate
seating
the
the
7-Eleven
time.
process
Everybody has
until
3
further
minutes.
delay, and direct your staff to develop a tentative price proposal as soon as possible.
Heidi, you know what, we
These
had
are the
talked
things
about
that
actually
can
having
and
a
should be
process
done
here
right
tonight,
now
and
to
I really
maintain
would
the
like your
collaborative
board president
spirit
to
and
respect
reassure
our
the
3 minutes
community.
at the podium.
We can do this. We
Thank
will
you,
do this.
Alexis.
We'll keep working
Thank
with you,
you.
but we're asking for your partnership.
Thank
we're
you.
offering suggestions for a better path.
We
Please
need to
take that.
No. Thank you. All right, I am, all right, we're gonna continue on with this, but I would really like everyone to respect each other. When other people are up here putting their time into 3 minutes, then everybody needs to respect everyone else's time, and I am gonna have to cut this short if we need to. All right, the next 5 speakers are gonna come up here. Bobby Wunsich, Yolanda, Florencia, Sharon Sagar, Lorraine's already spoken, and Nicole Garcia. So Bobby, Yolanda, Florencia, Sharon Sagar, and Nicole. And I'm gonna ask again Please do respect all of our public process with the 3-minute time frame.
I'm Bobby Wunsch. I live in San Anselmo. I'm a voter. My children went to the Children's Center. They also went all through the Ross Valley Schools. I was on the founding board of the S Foundation. And I'd like to make a few comments. First of all, I would like to ask you to stop referring to the 1985 letter that Ethel and Stan Siderman offered to buy the San Anselmo property, I'm sorry, the Fairfax Deer Park property, and withdrew that sale. I believe you don't know that they withdrew that sale because of anti-Semitism. And you speak of justice and democracy. The entire Fairfax neighborhood rose up because they were Jewish and accused them that if they bought that property for the San Anselmo Fairfax Children's Center, that they would develop it. And they withdrew that offer because of that. So I personally find it offensive that at every meeting you bring that up. So please stop referring to that. That happened over 40 years ago. It's old news, and it's very offensive that you keep going back to that, because why it was withdrawn was bad news and is not in keeping with everything you say at the beginning of every one of these meetings. Secondly, I find it offensive that you've gone after the Deer Park property when almost every one of the other properties of this school district are at dead-end streets in fully forested areas. And my guess is they are also liability properties, since pretty much every property that we all live on are fire hazards. And I don't understand why those properties are not of deep concern to each one of you. And the only difference I can figure is that there's no children of color living on those school properties.
Thank you.
So if we're going to talk about democracy and justice, let's get this building transferred. This property is not going to be valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars with a revision clause, with a fire hazard, as you've and your lawyer have described it hundreds of times, on a building that you have put no investment into for many, many years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, please refrain, Yolanda. You can go ahead, he'll come up.
Mi nombre es Yolanda Barahona. Buenas tardes a cada uno de ustedes y cada uno. Estoy aquí otra vez en esta reunión, siempre vengo. Y estábamos algunas mamás haciendo un esfuerzo de ver la página del distrito y encontrar esos documentos que están ahí. Y es muy difícil encontrarlos y poder leerlos. Son largos. Necesitamos que ustedes también nos highlighter, o como se diga, ¿verdad? Algunas partes que son interesantes, y encontramos que dentro de las 3 propuestas, ustedes en esta noche estaban diciendo que van a aprobar una resolución que tiene ahí que vamos a tener todas nosotros familias un año de espera para saber si nos van a sacar o no nos van a sacar del Children's Center. Y eso es un estrés prolongado. Es un estrés prolongado que no solamente nos afecta a nosotros como adultos, porque sabemos lo que eso significa, sino que lo vamos a pasar a nuestros hijos porque es imposible que no sea así, aunque no queramos. Entonces, yo quiero entender por qué ustedes no están utilizando este tiempo, como otras personas ya dijeron, para poder ver de qué maneras más rápidas podemos hacer que el edificio del Children's Center y las instalaciones sean adecuadas para que estos niños y estas familias no tengan que irse. Yo no sé para dónde nos vamos a tener que ir porque hay listas largas de esperas en todos los centros de cuidado y más que todo o solamente los que son para bajos recursos. Entonces, pienso que sería importante que ustedes pudieran dar esos pasos concretos que signifiquen que el Children's Center pueda seguir funcionando para todas nuestras familias y la comunidad. Entonces, ¿por qué no hacer un contrato de renta suficiente como para que el Children's Center pueda tener el préstamo que necesita? Pregunto, por favor, no aprueben esa ley con eso, esa moción o noción o como se diga, con esa opción ahí. Eso no nos beneficia, no queremos eso. Es un año de estrés.
Please do the interpretation for us.
One thing I would like to bring out is that from the perspective of all of us mothers, it's very difficult to understand the information that you're presenting. It's very complicated. We look at this information, we go to the websites, we click on the documents. A lot of it is very complicated, and even though we make an effort, it's very hard to understand and even imagine all of these different points that are interesting. We get a few highlights here and there. We get a little bit of the idea, and here you're presenting this very complicated resolution with all this information that is very hard for us as concerned mothers and families to be able to understand. And it's been a very stressful year navigating and trying to understand the process. And as she says, I come to all these meetings. I'm here again, and I try to understand these things, but it's very stressful, not just for children, but just for adults, because we know it's going to impact our children and it's going to have long-term consequence. So what I want to understand, why, again, has been mentioned by other individuals, you're spending all of this time, without something that is really beneficial. Looking into the sale or transfer, but why not put all of that time and energy into making the Children's Center an adequate space that functions well, and to set aside funds and resources that would really accommodate the needs of the community, because there's long waiting lists and there's a lot of need that hasn't been met to have a functional space and a place that our children can truly benefit from. So again, I just ask that you not pass this resolution as it's written for the idea that it's not something that really is beneficial for our children and our community at this moment.
Thank you. Florencia, please, 3 minutes.
You let me know when I can start. Okay. So my name is Florencia Parada, and I'm very concerned with the action item that recommends approval of resolution number 42223 to secure Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center occupancy through August 31st, 23, with a lease to cease thereafter. This looks like a potential eviction to me. And especially if the pathway with the timeline that you identified doesn't work. You always mention how complicated the situation is with a lot of moving parts. This is your words, a lot of moving parts and elements to all of the aspects of the work you are doing together. It's complicated. And you are the one who hold all the power to work out a direct sale or transfer the Deer Park site to the center. You're the one who has the power. You're the one who decides. And from the beginning, your approach has not followed a democratic process. So how do we make sure there is a check and balance in this process? so we can move the agenda forward as you mentioned today. We hear you also saying just 2 meetings ago that families should not be worried or losing sleep over this. But you still have in your 3 solution pathways, the pathway number 3, where the center should move permanently if the other pathways are unsuccessful. Again, you're the one who will decide that. We're in your hands. Is that fair? Is this reasonable? In previous meetings, you expressed your concern for our families' mental health and the level of stress these threats, the eviction threats, are causing to their lives. You said that you will follow up with this, but you didn't. You haven't done it yet. So how we can make sure this process will be conducted with integrity and transparency to the end where the district will transfer the properties to the center as you say. It is concerning because your words don't often seem to match your actions. From one meeting to another, you change. How we can trust you? So one recommendation to this democratic process will be to find an independent mediator between the 2 parties if you want to build trust in this community. I'm also asking the community and everyone who is listening and cares for the Children's Center to help us hold the Ross Valley School District Board accountable. Let's be careful and not be misled by the words, because that really matters. What really matters are the actions that will be taken here. And I also asking the entities that the board president mentioned as part of these conversations, like Marine Community Foundation, like the Marin County Office of Education, the County of Marin, the City of Fairfax, and other entities who have been having conversations with you to take an active role to secure Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center occupancy at Deer Park and stop all the threats of evictions so we can find real trusting solutions. So our recommendation, first, we are not supporting the recommendation you're trying to pass today. Second, we want to remove the pathway number 3 from this resolution. And third, this is our essential workers that you need it in times of crisis. This is our essential workers. So let's be grateful for that and honor them.
Thank you. Nicole?
Hey.
Hi.
So yeah, Nicole, a parent of 2 Ross Valley School District children, as well as a participant in Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center. So I want you to remember, we are respecting you by our cheers and our comments that go over 3 minutes. But look around, all of us have our kids here. They're not home yet having dinner. They're not being babysat by your significant others or whatever y'all got going on. Bring your families here and sit through an hour of you patting your backs about how much work you've been doing. Like, I'll give you all gold stars for that, but have respect for us sitting through that for an hour, and you can handle a couple more minutes here and there. So I just wanted to respond to some of the comments made by the board last meeting. This is not just an issue of color. This is an issue of equity. All the children here in this district are participating at Fairfax and Anselmo Children's Center. They are not families from outside of here. I appreciate your attempts to relate to us, but unless your experience has been a low-income family here in San Anselmo and Fairfax, your experience is vastly different than the rest of us here. Last meeting was extremely traumatizing and disheartening. Your focus on safety and the images of things on fire only made me more concerned for my children who attend White Hill with one way in and one way out. There was a comment worrying about our children's safety, but why is the Children's Center being scapegoated as the only site that you property manage as having these issues of water pressures and evacuation problems? This seems like a smokescreen. The historical study seems like a stall tactic to confuse our audience and to blind them from what's really happening. The center has passed all major inspections to continue to run the only low-income program within San Anselmo and Fairfax, which offers food and transportation services from all your schools. We have been used to passing quality and compliance inspections for many, many years. How are we the richest county in the nation, one of the richest county in the nation, and some of the most affluent barrios, and yet we're being marginalized as low-income communities who bust their asses for fundraisers so you could just be hands-off property managers who sleep just fine at night taking the checks for the last few years. I had a much different experience going to my children's back-to-school night that you guys mentioned. When parents were asked about current events that were important to them, their response was COVID. While we have the United Farm Workers marching from San Diego to Sacramento to have the right to unionize, this is California history that's not being spoke about at your schools. These are the things I want my children to learn. And again, this is not just another example of how it falls on the low-end class, underprivileged, mostly BIPOC communities to come here and protest and talk at public comment to fight for their rights for equity.
Thank you, Nicole.
If
That's
this
3
program
minutes.
leaves RVSD, then you are actively participating and pushing out redlining, marginalizing, and perpetuating the structural racism that exists in this district.
Nicole, thank you. I want to go ahead and on to our next
It's
speaker.
okay.
Thank you.
The family, students, and community members are here to let you know we don't trust your process. Please do not pass this resolution. This feels intentional.
Thank you.
All these barriers to you staying that we would prefer to have a mountain biking track or a park.
Thank you. All right, Sharon, thank you, Nicole. Can
We
move?
deserve a deadline. We deserve a date. Stop the terrorism. A year of terrorism is too much for us.
Thank you.
Be mindful of our time, skipping dinner and having sleepy kids. And we show up every single time, every meeting.
Thank you, Nicole.
Stop the
Thank
extension
you.
of oppression
Okay, thank
in
you.
Ross Valley School
Thank
District.
you. Thank you. Sharon? Sharon, 3 minutes, please.
Yes, my name is Sharon Sager, and I have to appreciate these people whose lives are being so totally affected by this issue, who feel very passionate, and I get to go home and not worry about this each night. However, I do keep coming to these meetings, and every meeting I think maybe I won't talk tonight, and yet I come up with that many comments listening to you. So, first of all, this property is valuable to this community because it's there someday if we need it. And so that's why I fought for that reversionary clause. Otherwise, I don't think you think that this property is worth anything because you're so willing to get rid of it. You were so willing to just accept the explanation that there was some reason why you could get rid of it because it was a fire hazard. I don't believe that. I don't know that anybody in this room believes that. I want to hear from our local fire officials to tell us that and tell us why this property is any more dangerous than any of our other school properties before I will even begin to believe that. So please bring them here so we can hear from them and not hear your interpretation of what they have to say. Oh gosh, I have so many things to say. Cost does matter in this issue, and I think you really need to be careful about what you choose for a purchase price. If another town sold a property for $1, they're a public agency too. Did you call them and ask them how they managed to do it? It doesn't just have to be a school district who does it. We can find out what ways there are available out there. Are there exemptions that we can apply to the State Board of Education to get around the price if that's the issue? What I see happening on social media is you're asking the community to start kicking in to make this sale happen. Well, this property belongs to our community. It belongs to us, and if we as a community want to sell it for $1, we should have the option to make that choice. Also, because you have that reversionary clause in there, there's got to be some opportunities that are not being considered when you look at just an outright sale of a property for 25%. So I think you need to dig a little deeper and find out what opportunities are there. Also, the comment was made that you had no intention to sell this property until you got into this process. Is that really true? What'll happen if this sale falls through? Now you'll have done the 7-Eleven committee. Will you still sell the property? I have questions about that as a community member. Also, gosh, I have so much. First of all, before I forget to say it, I would like to be a member of the 7-Eleven committee. I have a great interest in that. I have a lot of information and history with this district. Also, I completely disagree with your resolution and the August lease termination deadline. If there's anything that we've learned in the last 40 years is things just don't go as you planned. So I have no hope or expectation that this will be over by August. And the fact that you've written it so that you don't say, and we'll take care of you in some way as an alternative is very concerning to me.
Thank you, Sharon. All right, we have 3 more people who are going to come up. Could we have Annabelle Adachi, Maya Estrada, and Baya McCourtney? So Annabelle, Maya, and Baya? All right. Annabelle?
Sorry, I made the bad decision of eating a cracker before coming up here.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I want to address the issue of supposedly people talking over 3 minutes is disrespecting everyone's time here. Is there anyone in the crowd here who has their kids here that feels disrespected by people talking over 3 minutes?
Can you address, please just address the
Okay.
comments to us. Thank you.
I'm trying to say that you guys seem to be the only ones who have a problem with the over 3 minute limit, and you're trying to make it seem as if everyone does. So I'd say be more specific about who is feeling disrespected when you're talking about disrespect. The main thing I want to address is that I've heard you guys talking about the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center and the land there as like an asset, and you want to hold on to that asset just in case it's yours. This is not an asset. That land is a community. It is like a pillar of this low-income, mainly people of color community. It's not an asset. This isn't monopoly. This isn't just money or value or land that you just hold on to and, oh, maybe we'll convert it into a school later. You want to just put a school in there? Like, what are we even talking about? Like, in order to build a school there, you'd be taking away the children's center that is crucial. Like, are we speaking the same language here? This is not like an asset or open land for you to push away unless you want to do something with it or build a school there. No, this is really important to the community. It's life-saving. I think that there's a certain amount of privilege that you have to be able to see this as just an asset, as just a piece of property that you can decide what you want to do with it. And you can just say, hey, we'll just evict you in 2023 if we feel like it. That is such a privilege for these people here who are spending their time hours here. It's not just that. It is their lives. There will be no one to go to the school that you build, hypothetically, if you shut down the San Anselmo Children's Center. Who's going to go to the school? So I'm asking you, as a community member and as someone who is standing with all these people, who goes to school with a lot of people who rely on the Children's Center, and who likes to believe in the fact that maybe the public officials that I will get to vote for, once I'm old enough to vote, actually care about us in the community.
Thank you.
I really ask that you listen to your community and do what's right.
Thank you.
Because these are people.
Thank you. All right, we have 2 more speakers. We've got Maya and Baya. Go ahead.
Hello again. My name is Maya Estrada. You just heard from my mom a little bit ago, so just be aware I do have her fire. I'm a mini her. I want to start by thanking Heidi and Eric for being my second parents, for Chenna for being my older sister that I always wanted and I always had, for Maddie, Annie, Shakira, for just always being there for me, for anyone who went to the center or was a part of the center or worked at the center or volunteered at the center. You guys made my childhood. You guys made me who I am now, and I love you so, so, so much. It really hurts to see this happen, to watch my center, my home, my everything start slipping from my hands. I love the center with my whole heart. I love it because it's my home. It's where I'm welcome. It's where I feel safe. I went to all the Ross Valley schools, Wade Thomas, White Hill. Now I go to Archie. I've never felt more welcome in a place than the center. You're taking away something that means so much to so many people. I brought my school here today, my STAR class. Shout out to them, Miss Ortega, because this is a matter that I care about deeply. And I want you all to pay attention when everyone is talking. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you guys. You guys are really sweet, and some others, I'm still deciding on my feelings on you. I love seeing some new people here and some new faces. But I just want you guys to look at all these people and notice that these are their homes. These are their lives. The center is all of us. So please don't take this away. I love you, Heidi and Eric.
All right, Maya.
Can I speak? Okay. My name is Bella McCourtney, and I'm a senior at Archie Williams, and I'm also part of STAR, the current anti-racist leadership at my school. I volunteered at the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center for a year during middle school. This center holds such a strong and crucial community that I would be devastated to see go. I know you think that it is critical for these families to have a safe and affordable place to go. Volunteering at the center showed me the importance of not only the childcare it provides, but the other resources it offers. We understand that a legal process has to occur to offer the Children's Center to city and county organizations, but we urge you to vote no on the resolution to prevent eviction of the Children's Center and to make it possible for you to transfer the community of the Children's Center at an affordable price closer to $1. The community will greatly benefit. Thank you for your collaboration thus far, and the Ross Valley School District should prioritize people over profit.
Thank you. You've been with us. We're going to do one more. We're just going to do one more comment because I didn't have it in calculated, but we're going to do one more comment. I know you've been in.
Great. Well, I really appreciate it, Shelley. And
if you can make it 3 minutes, please.
Carl Brown, a board member, and I've been part of these Deer Park working groups. I just wanted to clarify a couple things about this resolution. Marcy, you talked about us doing this in collaboration. This resolution was sent to us an hour before our meeting on Monday. We had very little time to review. And even in that time, our council identified some pretty core issues. At that point, we brought up 2 ways that we could work together to create a resolution that we could agree upon. One of the suggestions was to take out the termination clause or the eviction clause at the end. The other suggestion was, let's come together in the working group at the next meeting and with council present and create a resolution that we can both support. Shelley, you firmly stated that you weren't interested in either of those, that you were going to present the resolution here. We said, hey, we are going to have to not support this resolution. You asked that we be respectful. I think we have been. Talking over our board president while she's finishing her remarks, I don't find respectful. So I would just, for those who don't know, for board members who don't know, we have shown up. We have worked collaboratively. We have found pro bono counsel who is very capable. And what we're asking for is that this resolution, we feel like is really setting a different tone. Is saying we're no longer kind of in collaboration, we're now opposed. So our hope is that this particular resolution doesn't get passed, that we amend it to something that we can both agree on. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and bring it back up to the board up here with public comment. We're going to go ahead and close.
Hi. We have 3 more.
No, we have 3 minutes. Go ahead. You guys have 3 minutes. Go ahead, 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Genesis. Hi, I'm Natasha. Hi, I'm Kayla. This is our favorite place. Please don't take it down. If you do, we would have nothing. This is our home. We have made a lot of memories and a lot of friends. Our parents have worked so hard to get us in this special daycare, and if you close it down, we will miss our friends and teachers. This will always be a special place in our hearts.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to bring this back up to the board for discussion. The main point that we have tonight is we have an action item that we do need to get to, which is regarding this resolution. So we can go ahead and have additional board comments and focus on that. I'm just going to start off by saying I continue to hear a lot of comments about closing the charter, closing the children's center down. We are not working to close the children's center down. As we said, we're moving forward and we're working actively with lots of demonstrated actions and effort in that way. So that's not what's happening here tonight. We're not closing the center down. And it's to hear things about stopping the oppression when we are trying to transfer ownership to the center. So what I believe that we can do this. I believe that we have a reasonable timeline. I believe that if we all come together as a community to work together constructively, to raise the money that's needed, to put in the time that's needed to make this transfer happen in this process, that we can do this. I believe we can do this. I don't believe that we need to be divided on this. I don't believe that we need to be fighting. We're working together to make it happen. We're not fighting. We're working together to make this happen, and it's going to take all of us to work together. And somebody mentioned a bunch of community agencies, and I think it's going to take a lot of community agencies to step in here. We've been talking to them. They've been helping. So I think we all need to come together to make this happen. And I think in these processes, there's a give and take, and the resolution tonight to me feels like a very reasonable give and take to work with what our needs are to move forward and to work with the Children's Center's needs to move forward. So that's what I have to say. So.
I have some questions for the Children's Center board. And I want the community to understand at the same time that respect is given both ways. I listen, I write notes. Every time someone speaks, every meeting, I write them down, I keep them, I read them, I remember them. Respect works both ways in every community, in every job site. Respect on the job site works both ways. If you are respecting our process, we're listening to you. If you want to talk over someone in our business meeting, that's disrespectful. But I always want to give the benefit of the doubt because I want to learn. I want to understand. This is what I'm talking about. This is my turn to speak. This is my turn to speak. This is our business meeting.
I'm going to ask that we are bringing the discussion back up here to the board. This is the way that our public process works. These are our business meetings for us to make decisions. We have 3 minutes, we have public comments, and then we bring it back up to the board for discussion.
So to bring back what I had said last week, I gave you my name, you have my email. I put it out there to the community if anybody had any questions or concerns that I was available. I am available. Not one person called me. Not one person. Well, that's why we open conversation, right? When we don't trust people, we engage in conversation, constructive, two-way, person-to-person conversation.
Brian, can we
at the end
bring
of the
it
day,
back to the board
I'll bring it back
discussion?
to the
Thank you.
board. I'm just commenting on the respect aspect because it works both ways. To directly ask the board, when we started meeting over at Manor School over 2 years ago to try to find solutions to this problem, I'm curious to find out what other sites has your board identified as possible sites for your center. All I've heard so far is we only want this site. And although I like this site too, and I think it's a great site, I'm curious to find out if we worked on other opportunities and other ideas, or have you identified any other sites since we started talking about this process personally over the last 2.5 years? Yes. Yes.
I think that'd be a great thing for us to agendize at our next work group meeting, and we could talk more about that. I don't have enough information right now.
Okay.
It's fair. I guess at the end of the day, I want to remind everybody that this is not just our board making a decision, right? This is a community making a decision. And although we have some right to understand what we do with this property, it's going to take a lot of lifting. It's going to take other agencies. It's going to take other identified people and community boards to assist. If by law we are not allowed to give it away for $1, and I don't know because I'm not rehearsed on how that works, I want to have a plan to know what your plan is to succeed. We are going to have to do this together, right? And we're going to need all people to communicate with respect, and we're going to all have to work together to make this work. You can't expect to put it on this board to do what you want without you doing some of the lifting. I'll say in closing that we all have to be active participants in our own rescue. And I like the comments because I like the center. But some of the process is difficult because we are bound by what we can do and what we want to do, and they're two different things. So I just want to remind everybody that we need to work with everyone, not just this board, but it's a bigger community issue than just us.
Marie? Pull it forward so you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when like was a month ago, maybe like 6 weeks ago, when I was asking, and I think Rachel as well was asking to see a timeline, this is exactly what I was looking for. And in my world of a timeline, you have a beginning and you have an end. And in any project that that I'm setting up for myself or in my business life, there is an end goal of reaching a date, whatever it is, and like in 12 months I will be 10 pounds lighter. In in 2026 I will be able to speak Spanish, or whatever are the goals that I'm setting myself up. I have always an end date. So I do absolutely. I'm comfortable with having an end date on this timeline, and I think it's necessary because this is how I'm thinking a project is running. So I think it's a must to have a date, and it could have been July, it could be September, but I think no matter what, I think having an end date, it's actually what we are marching toward, and that gives us a goal to go there. And I think if we have a goal, we will march maybe a little bit faster toward that. And I have been in the past kind of wanted to see things moving a little bit faster, and I think by having that day there, I think it's going to get us there faster, having that goal. If anything, we're going to go faster. So I'm encouraged by seeing a date. If anything, I see that positively, because I see there is an intention to get there. Without an ETA, we might get there slower, versus this way that gets us on track to get there together. Right? It's not just us, but I think it's a good plan. I think there's a good plan, and the plan has an end date. So I'm very motivated with this timeline here, because I think it's going to kick everybody's butt to get there. That's my take.
Rachel, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, the first time I read it on Friday, I think it was Friday. I read it several times and went over it, especially after we got some feedback about it in public comments, which I always read. I'm sure you all do as well. Yeah, I can take my mask off. So I know last week, I guess, not even last month. Last week, we specifically directed staff to get a lease together for 1 year, and this is what we've got. After I reread it, I realized why people were having such a negative reaction, because it looks like an eviction. And I respect why everyone got upset. I didn't read it that way at first, because I know that we're coming at it in a good faith position, and I know that we are trying to make sure that this happens. One of the reasons I asked about other entities, public entities, interest in buying the location is because, to my knowledge, we don't have any, which I would see as a barrier. And for me, I'm willing to spend the extra $44,000, I think you said, on someone to do the 7-Eleven committee, because I want to make sure that we can transfer this, and I want to make sure that there's not a barrier, and someone will come in and say, hey, why didn't you just do this when it could have been a free transfer to another public entity? So I needed to be clear on that. But I do see why people are upset. it looks that way. And because of that concern, one of the questions that I was going to ask, but I think Marcy already beat me to it, as if we're in process and there's a sale and we hit August 31st, we're not going to evict. It's not going to be a kick them out the door. Why would we do that if we're in the process of a sale? Then you'd have to move out and then move back in. So I think there's room for extensions in this if we're in the middle of the process and it's going forward. And so that was my concern if we signed off on this resolution, that there would be like a hard deadline. And it seems like we have some flexibility with this resolution. We just make another one to supersede it, I think. At least that's my understanding. And so because I know that we're coming at this with the goal of getting it over to you, because honestly, we don't want to kick you out and have an empty building. That to me is a nightmare. I don't want that. Like that facility should be used. So if you can use it and you can handle it and we don't have the risk as far as us, to me, that's the best case scenario. It might cost us more, but I think it would be the best benefit for the community, and it would help us with the liability aspect. So the reason I didn't have such a negative reaction is because I know that it's in our interest to help this happen. So I think we're looking for other communities, other people, other entities in the community to help you get this purchase done, because it will be in all of our interest. So that said, I'm comfortable with the resolution as written because I know that we have that buffer if there's extra time needed, and I know that we have this goal and it's a legitimate one that we're heading towards, and I know there's a lack of trust, and I get that. I know Ryan offered people to contact him. You're welcome to contact me as well. My email's on the website, or you can come up and ask me later. I'm happy to communicate with anyone who has questions. But I think for me, we're doing this in good faith, and I agree with Marie, we have an endpoint, and we're gonna try and make sure that we get there. So that's how I feel about this resolution.
And to add to that, Rachel, the fact that the comment about there is no buffer, that there was some comment about there is no buffer in the plan, there is actually the famous 60 days might be shortened as well. So I think this is actually look like a decent project plan with buffers everywhere on what's the longest step, and everything is buffered. So I do trust this is definitely a project plan that looks very feasible, and I'm very encouraged to see that, because I do trust that we're going to get there. I'm very excited. Yeah.
And like I said, I believe 100% that we can do this. And by we, I mean us, I mean you, I mean the community, I mean all of the community institutions that can step up and make this happen with the money that needs to come forward, with the technical assistance that needs to come forward. I'm 100% sure that we can make this happen. And I would like all of us to get behind that, to do fundraising instead of fighting, to work together and make this happen. I know we can do it. I know we have a good timeline. I think we can transfer the property and then the lease isn't going to be needed. And I know that we also need to have a give and take on balancing occupancy stability, getting rid of our ongoing concerns about liability issues, and then we can put that aside, be done with that, and move forward on this transfer process. So I would like, I think that's what we need to do to move forward and move forward with the community to make this happen. And then we can all roll up our sleeves and get moving on, like I said, raising the money that needs to be raised, putting the money in that we're gonna put in, and make this transfer happen, so.
I want to totally agree with what everybody said up here. I mean, there's been no resistance from this board to this center. I've been working on this now for 4 years and involved in it in 5 years. And I've repeatedly said, I think your program is amazing. And yet, when people come up and talk, I just feel like there's so much opposition and lack of trust. We have really been transparent with this process. And although, to use a quote that I heard, we can explain it to you, we can't understand it for you. There has to be trust in process.
Right.
There has to be trust in the process.
Brian, can we bring it back up to the board? And
there has to be trust in the process. And I have incredible trust that we are doing this for the right reasons. And I feel like the lack of trust is.
Can we bring it back up to our board discussion? Not a community discussion? Okay, so So we do have an action item tonight. We've heard from all of our board members. And so I'd like to focus on the board discussion that we need to have. If there's any other discussion that we need to have, we do have an action item before us.
I'll just say, I apologize if I offended anyone. I am not intending to offend.
Ryan, we're bringing
I'm going to apologize in public if I offended. I am trying to say,
Ryan, we're going to bring.
I am just trying to simply say that I'd like your trust because I am working for you.
Ryan, I'm going to ask that we bring it back to the decision at hand that we have before us. If there are other comments with respect to the decision that we need to make. If there are no
I'm
other
ready to make a motion if we're already here. So I just want to try to find the right wording. I make a motion to approve the resolution to secure the Children's Center occupancy at Deer Park through August 31, 2023.
I'll go ahead and second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and take a vote. Marie?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
And Shelley? Aye. All right. We have finished with that part of the agenda, and we will bring back the 7-Eleven process to move forward at our next board meeting with all of that information, and we will continue our discussion in the working groups. All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and then we'll move forward with the meeting.
From our break, this is Ryan O'Neill. Shelley had to leave the meeting for a flight, so we're going to continue the meeting, and we'll pick it up with item F, consent actions. Does anybody want?
Yeah, so I reviewed the consent action and I have no comments, so I'm ready to make a motion to approve the consent action the way they have been described in action F.
Do we have any public comment?
Good question. Okay.
Seeing one member of the public.
Well, I'm going to do it again, no public comments, so I'm make a motion to approve the consent actions.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion by Marie and a second by Rachel. We'll take a vote. Marie?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Ryan? Aye. That should move us to G, our board business, committee updates and report from trustees.
Well, I have generally I like Rachel to start because she has all the fun with Frenchy stuff, but I had a very good GELAC meeting last week, if you want to hear about it. Okay. This time I didn't really have much chance to write down my notes during the meeting as I didn't have any pen and paper. In general, I like to send Chris and Marcy my update, but I didn't. So it's all here. So one thing that was interesting is what's going on right now in Sacramento is that there is a lot of seats up to election in November. So what that means for all of us is that we're going to have to re-educate a lot of our, elected board members. Everybody we're going to have educate again because this is a lot of folks are going to change. And that actually creates a little bit of, it's a little bit unsettling, but it's also kind of an opportunity to meet some new folks and sell our education agenda to different members. And I was just going to bring one of the action that now being taken by Mark Lavin. So Mark Lavin is right now working on the policy around having, as an example, he's working on the policy having staff in schools being able to provide better support if a kid has a seizure. So, for instance, that's an example, and I'm giving this one as an example because this one is brought to by Mark Levin because he cares about that specific situation because he's related himself or his kids or someone in his family has some seizure. So I want to give that as an example of why it matters to establish relationship with everybody we elect in Sacramento, is that what they are bringing to the table might be some personal item to them. And if they care about something, they will bring it there. Right, so some of those individuals who care about one item just want to go for it. So we're not going to have to do more, introduction. And we are with the fact that Mark Levine is moving, we are going to have some new folks to talk to, some new assembly members to talk to. I want to kind of give you a sense of a couple of bills that are getting very kind of in the news right now. One of them, and I don't want you to be fooled by that one, so I want to make sure you know about it, is the SB 490 by Caballero. It's around the Buy American Food Act. And if you have not heard about that one, that looks like a great idea to say, hey, like for all the food that we are buying for the kids, we need to buy American, right? So that's very appealing. It will prohibit LEA from purchasing agricultural product packed or processed non-domestically outside of the US, unless the price of the non-domestic agricultural food product is more than 25% lower than the bid or price of the domestic product. But what it is actually, it would be a killer. It would be a killer to implement, and it would be at such a low cost for districts that we need to pay attention to this one. So this one has been kind of in the back burner last year, but it's coming back. So I want us to pay attention to that one. Similar to last year, there will be some more follow-up on some bills from Portantino around the enrollment-based versus ADA-based. We talked about that, that's coming back, trying to figure out how we can be funded by enrollment versus ADA. But again, the details have not been provided, so we wouldn't even know at this point if it would be beneficial or not beneficial. All of that there's a lot of topics keep going on the fact that California is one of the few states still funding the schools on ADA versus enrollment. So that one, I'm going to keep updating you this year because there is definitely quite a few bills getting kind of talked about this one. And the one that may also resurface in 2023 is a change to the LCFF definition. So that would be a change of the way we are calculating the funding. And it is the way they are talking about it is so absolutely confusing that we do hope that's not going to go forward the way it's written right now. That's the current LCFF formula, the formula that's used to determine our level of funding is already complicated enough. And it's an example of bills getting proposed by individuals who don't really understand all the details behind that. And what's getting on the table is absolutely almost like it's so many questions about it and so many options to interpret the formula that it would be absolutely a nightmare. So I want to make sure we keep an eye on those as well, because for people who are in the field, those are absolutely bad news. They come with a good intent, but they would be such a nightmare to implement for the entire state that I do hope those don't go forward. So that was this one I wanted to talk about. And I want to kind of mention that CSBA is proposing again a Masters of Governance class that this year are going to be virtual again. So if any of us or a new member or someone who is interested in getting a Master in Governance as a trustee, they're going to do that again, but that virtually. And I just want to make sure you know that there is another conference happening this year, CSBA conference happening in San Diego from December 1 to 3. And they seem to be considering that to be in person, but there might be some kind of sessions online, so I'm still trying to figure it out. I didn't attend last year, but I think Shelly attended a couple of, those sessions. So I wanted you to know about that. And that's all I have. If you have any question, really, and if you read an article about any bill that you are worried about and you want to know more, just ping me because I have access to a lot of information I can just send in the right direction. And I have a couple of JLAC updates I want to forward to you. I've been a bit late in doing so. So please outreach if you want to know more. But it's definitely going to be a big year ahead for us. Yeah. That's what I have. Go JLAC.
It's only been a week. I have a board meeting tomorrow. So thanks, Tom. No, please.
Okay.
Okay, let's move it over to the approval of the regular minutes for August 23rd. It would only likely be Rachel and myself. Well, let's just take a vote. I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for August 23rd.
I don't think we have enough to approve, do we? Because you weren't here on the 23rd.
Actually, neither of you were here?
I was here.
I think I was
here on the
23rd.
23rd.
Were you here on the 23rd?
Just last meeting?
You were here in the last meeting. Wasn't here on the 23rd. But you weren't here on the 23rd, and so.
Why didn't we approve that one last?
Because you were on here. So
And
you were
you-
gonna abstain.
Yeah, you were gonna.
Oh, we
abstain
carried it
because
over.
Yeah. we
Okay,
carried-
great.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
I won't make a
Yeah.
motion.
No,
I'll
we have to
let's
reach
rescind
out
that. I thought it was last meeting from last
So
week.
can we push it to the next meeting?
Yeah.
So we're just gonna carry that one over. So
Yeah.
no action will be taken on that approval of the regular meeting minutes for August 23rd. And we'll move to approval of the regular minutes for September 13th,
And we only have 2 for that as well.
but we can move that forward.
No, because I was not here.
So she would abstain.
I was ashamed. So
Okay.
we just motion, but I can't really.
So we'll rescind that and we will carry both of those over to our next meeting, which brings us to HR Superintendent and Cabinet Report. Marcy.
All right, Chris, you can go.
Yes, yesterday we had a water main leak at Hidden Valley, and it ended up being underneath the entrance to the tennis court. And it took 2 days of digging it out, and this morning a leak detection, leak finder company came in just to show you how difficult this has been for them. Even they gave us the wrong location. And so it ended up being about a foot over from where they told us. And they told us it was underneath one of the posts to the tennis court fence, which was under 3 feet of concrete. And so the pipe ended up having the leak about a foot over from there. And so we were able to trench it out and get that repaired today, and the water was back up this afternoon. I do want to point out that all of the work for the trenching itself was done by our own staff.
Oh, fantastic.
They spent 2 days in the trench.
How many staff is that?
Well, it's on and off between 2 and 4 people at any given time. And keep in mind, as you're doing it, you're having to rotate through it because you're removing concrete, you're removing asphalt, you're digging through rocks and things that get in the way. And all the while, you have to be careful because you don't want to puncture the pipe and yourself. And we didn't know exactly how far down it was. That's also part of the problem. But because it was right next to that 3-foot concrete beam or post, that's really what really was causing the trouble for the location. But in the end, again, they did a great job, and it is back up and functioning, and we'll get it filled and have somebody come in and make the minor repairs to that, the tennis court right next to the fence and also the entrance, as well as get everything filled back in, because currently we have it. There's about a 4-foot trench there. So I just want to say thank you to our staff.
Yeah.
Amazing work. Yeah, pass on that. Thanks.
And was there any water issue at the school as well? When there was no water going on at school?
One of the things that we did, we brought in porta potties.
Yeah.
And we also made sure that we had plenty of bottled water for children and staff. Okay. And so we wanted to make sure that all of those issues were taken care of as well. And so we had brought in the porta potties early yesterday, and they had water on hand, and we went and purchased more for them today.
Okay. Bravo. Thank you for the work from the staff.
So,
nice job.
And that was it.
Yeah, and I don't have any other updates this evening, so I think with that, and we don't have Julia and Eric here with us, so we'll hopefully get into a more of a routine as we get further along into the school year with being able to provide regular updates to you all.
Okay, so we'll move on to meeting review. It was interesting.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say overall that I think the transparency and how we're trying to bring this process forward for all of our stuff is great. And I think it's all available, and anybody who wants to find the information, it's there, and everything is able to be located. And I think all of us have also made ourselves available for all these questions. And so I'm proud of us as a group for being available and transparent, because I think the answers are there if those people want to find them, and it's easy to find online too. So, anyone else? With that, we will adjourn at 9:51.